Welcome to the Trash Can, where we make treasure out of the average man's garbage. I'm Darren.
I'm Eric.
I'm Chris. Hello.
I'm Campbell.
And I'm Steven.
All right, well, welcome everyone here. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. Basically, the topic of today's podcast is going over recent news within the week. We're going to be using our sources from Reddit, so hopefully nobody takes too much of offense at that. So we're going to go ahead and start here from the top. So it says that right here, I'm not looking at the article just yet, but it says within the title, it says, newly revealed financial records show Trump owes millions to state-owned bank in China, report. And so, I mean, we've all kind of seen within the past couple weeks, like, he's very, I guess, well, not even the past couple weeks, I guess years, he's very approachable, I guess you could say, to some people we call dictators. Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin. Anyone have to say anything about that?
I guess my first question would be more or less, is that money kind of on his private side that we're talking about here? Or is that kind of talking about just his state influence with him kind of putting the U.S.'s interest in debt to the Chinese?
Well, I'm actually just now reading the article, which I probably should have done earlier. But basically, if you want, I could read out the entire article, and then we could all pick it apart, because it's not actually that long, but I don't want to pad it out too much. I'll just go ahead and just paraphrase it. So it says right here that President Donald Trump owes tens of millions to a state-owned Chinese bank, and the loan is due in what would be this middle of his second term should he win re-election, according to financial reports obtained by Politico. Trump has claimed that China will own the United States if former Vice President Joe Biden wins the election, but the report reveals that the president will be on the hook for a large debt to the Bank of China in 2022. That is the same bank that Trump linked a $1.5 billion investment plan announced by Biden's son Hunter in 2013, days after both Bidens traveled to China. Why did the Chinese government bank want to do business with Hunter Biden while his dad was vice president? The Trump campaign asked on Twitter earlier this month. His campaign also pushed the issue in a campaign ad. Trump's debt stems from his 30% owner stake in a 43-story New York skyscraper at 1290 Avenue of the Americas, the documents show. Trump has bragged that he got the building from China in a war. He went to China and he went to Shanghai and just started nailing people in the streets, and then they came to the table and goes, hey, listen, just take the building. You won.
Yeah, good, very nice. It's like Hotel Rwanda.
Gosh. I beat China all the time, he said when he announced his presidential campaign in 2015. I own a big chunk of the Bank of America building in San Francisco and 1290 Avenue of the Americas that I got from China in a war. Very valuable. I love China. I got medals from China. He didn't say that last part. But the New York Times reported in 2016 that Trump only owned 30% of both buildings. I guess he could only have the top floors, the bottom floors, the middle floors, or a little bit of the floors. You can't. It's a bit weird owning only 30% of a building. But and Trump's financial ties to the country do not end with his ownership stake in the building. Chinese state-owned companies are developing 2 luxury Trump buildings in Indonesia and the United Arab Emirates. The president and his daughter Ivanka have also been granted numerous trademarks by the Chinese government since he took office. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has sought Chinese investment in at least one real estate deal. And then there's another quote here from a representative, but I'll just go ahead and skip that and keep going. Though Trump has denied any conflicts of interest, he also has refused to divest from his company. While Trump is considered a passive investor in the New York skyscraper, he is on the hook for tens of millions after the Vornado Realty Trust, the building's primary owner, refinanced the building for $950 million in 2012. The debt included a $211 million loan from the Bank of China, the first loan of its kind in the U.S., according to the Wall Street Journal. Vornado's federal filings show that it and Trump are still in debt to the Chinese bank, and the loan is due in 2022. Government watchdogs said the report showed that Trump remains deeply conflicted because of his continued ownership of his company. And then we'll go ahead and keep going further. The Trump campaign told the outlet that Trump's debt to China is completely different from Hunter Biden's dealings. I don't know the full extension with Hunter's dealings, but maybe we can talk about that if anyone here does know about it. Maybe coordinate it, because apparently that's the Trump's campaign kind of defense, is just telling them that, hey, the other guy has some, so we're not in the wrong, or we're both in the wrong.
I don't even understand that. That's not even the fucking political opponent. You're just going after like his son or some bullshit.
Yeah, let's keep an eye on the language here, folks. All right. So yeah. what's it? Yeah, so a lawyer for Hunter Biden rejected the allegation. He told the outlet that Biden's business partners received 4.2 million from a group of investors in China in a private equity deal, not the 1.5 billion the investment firm said was its goal in the deal. So I guess they were trying to go for something higher, and they only got the 4.2 million. That's kind of a bit low, but the lawyer,
4%.
mhm. The lawyer added that Biden did not conduct any business when he visited China with his father, but did meet with a Chinese businessman later tapped to be the investment venture. Biden did not participate in the deal until he acquired a 10% financial stake for $420,000. Biden announced he was stepping down from the investment firm last year. Colin Cowell, a former aide to President Barack Obama and Joe Biden, said the newly revealed records show that Trump's attacks on Biden are hypocritical. The next time Trump breathes one word about Biden and China, remember this, he tweeted. Trump is up to his eyeballs in debt to the Bank of China, and the loan is due soon. So yeah,
Wait, was that Joe Biden?
no, that I think that was the former aide to Barack Obama. They just grabbed his.
I was wondering why it sounded like Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, I just got funny with the voices, but yeah. So I mean, I mean, for as about as popular as it was, it seems kind of, I guess, standard in terms of typical outrage.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot more that could have been, right?
It's not something he applied during his presidency. It's just something before he did it. So I mean, I guess it's the conflict of being a businessman before being a president, and then having your past catch up with you. So it's not necessarily anything too bad, in my opinion. It just kind of shows the hypocrisy behind him. But
If I may.
Oh, go right ahead.
So conflict of interest is pretty standard insofar as a lot of the presidents have gone so far. Trump definitely way more than others. But the main issue here is since it's state run, and with Chinese unrest mounting, like especially during the coronavirus times where the Chinese citizens like the state consistently tries to push out a lot of propaganda globally. They push that same kind of propaganda into their people, but the people who are least likely to buy the BS of the Chinese propagandist state is people at this point. Right at this point, they've wisened up. There's been a bunch of community leaks from the ground zero where China initially said, "Oh, everything's fine. There's nothing to worry about here. There's only a couple of cases where over 90% of the area was infected, and despite the widespread infection of the coronavirus early on, I think in November, early on, the people who were there were still forced to go to work. The business were forced to give electricity bills to the Chinese to
Now
prove,
to
oh,
that break.
we are, keeping open. So instead of keeping open, those places closed down but left electricity on overnights, right? Just to make up for the fact that they're not, they're protecting the people who are largely there. So with that in mind, with all the unrest in mind, and Beijing's climbing to a peak, I think the crazy to see U.S. inside of the dictatorial Chinese state, right? Especially with the whole. It's not that the conflict of interest would cause that, but it's definitely that the conflict of interest would, well, be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, like he would basically be in the hand of the Chinese because he has that loan. Even though, I mean, I guess he would lose the building if he didn't pay back the loan, or because it says it's due in 2022, right?
I guess so. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know the details of the specific thing, but I think the point is he's more likely to push some kind of support towards the government, to keep everything the same. It'll just blow over, blah blah blah, even though it definitely won't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
definitely
Yeah.
something to look out for.
Yeah, yeah.
I think a good bargaining chip on their end.
because I think I've seen that in the past, like with there was Trump buildings being built in Turkey, and during that same week that they were being like authorized to be built, or maybe even not being built, but maybe they were already built and they were being opened, they got like financial aid or something like that, like increased like something in some sort of benefits. I don't remember the exact benefit it was, but I do remember people were like, he opened the building there and he got benefit, he gave Turkey benefits, and
Right.
yeah, so yeah.
Influencing the U.S. foreign affairs is definitely a big plus if you're on his side. So
If it
or
was,
have something to threaten him with.
yeah, if it was the average person, I feel like it'd be a lot safer. I feel like I don't know, but then he's obviously a man who's bankrupted companies like 5 times. He's not very liable.
Well, remember that his supporters will tell you that the whole bankruptcy thing was supposed to happen. He was supposed to bankrupt the casinos because then he gets something out of it or something like that. I haven't looked
I
into that, but I don't know.
see how that makes it any better because it feels like a really crooked way of kind of handling a business, one way or the other.
Well, I mean, maybe some businessmen out there would seem that the more crooked you are, the more successful you are at running a business.
Well,
So
yeah, that is true. If as long as you can follow the law to the fullest extent without breaking rules, quote unquote,
yeah.
then yeah, you are successful in that sense. Doesn't mean you're morally successful though.
What do you think about all this, Cam?
I'm not surprised by any of this. This has just been topics that we covered throughout his presidency. Hey, Trump owes money. Trump owes money. Trump is a shady businessman. Trump lies. And it's not surprising anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of like I've noticed a lot of things with the recent news. It's like Trump says something wrong on television, and then it's like 25th Amendment now, remove him, and it's like, well, if what he just said now, like he said a lot of worse stuff before, and that didn't get him removed. So it's like I don't know if the people on Twitter just think that like there's like a tally mark system where it's like he did 5 bad things this week. That's a call for the 25th Amendment right there, right? Or maybe like a
No.
bingo card or something like that.
I think a lot of people have just dismissed him off as incoherent at this point instead of having to, trying to push to get him out of office, which clearly doesn't seem as going to happen at all.
Yeah, if he can't get impeached for a pretty obvious crime.
Well, he got impeached. He just didn't get removed.
Yeah.
Nah, fair enough. Yeah, that's something that definitely he kept saying. And I know it's just on Corona right now, but as soon as like Trump gets back in the main media, impeach Trump.
Well, I saw that recently on.
Throwing in the word impeached, and everyone will kind of.
Right.
Well, the thing I saw earlier this week on Twitter was people yelling. It was one of the trending topics. It was the 20th Amendment, which is just straight calling for the removal of president. Now, I know there's been plenty of presidents been impeached in the past, and some of the ones that we think are actually they weren't impeached, they were just resigned or whatever. But I don't think I've actually ever heard of a president being removed from office.
Yeah, I actually looked into that for like all the people who have been impeached. Even the first guy was James
And Andrew Jackson, yeah.
Yeah, Andrew Jackson. He didn't even get like fully impeached. He just got acquitted as well.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. You would think it would be something to do about because I believe he was the president during the Reconstruction era and the Civil War. But I think what got him impeached is he went against the banks and the big banks in America at that time, and that's what got him impeached. Which is kind of funny if you just stray away against what the status quo of what the 1% was then it's kind of like you're thrown under the bus. It's like it's quite crazy. Like I feel like I guess with Trump. Like there would be quicker way. It's weird, right? Because it's like it's not that they impeached him because of like stuff that he's done like to outside people, right? It's like I actually don't even know what was he was impeached because of the Russian thing, right? Or what was the
Russian.
So.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it wasn't like
led an investigation via outside means.
There you go.
On the basis of political interest.
It was Ukraine.
Yeah, no, it was on the basis
Ukraine,
of political interest, but it was for his own political interest.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
because it's not like we impeach president over something like I don't know, maybe a drone strike hitting a wedding or like putting kids in concentration camps or something like that. But going to Ukraine to ask for investigating a rival political opponent is what causes the impeachment. So. It's just a very.
I'm going to be very specific on the reason. It was using government
funded or
government funded for personal means.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's amusing the propensity to which he's able to, in a way, rightly so, shift the blame from himself onto his other political colleagues,
Hmm.
because it's a huge disconnect from all sides, because we're more interested in the things that affect people while they're more interested in the things that affect themselves and their party lines and the positioning and all the hegemony they're trying to pull off. It's
Well,
pretty strange.
it's the thing, right? Is that like you never want to be on the defensive. If you're ever having to explain yourself in a political debate, you're technically losing, at least to what the current standards in society are. If you're always attacking, you're always being seen as the guy that's stronger, and you're always going to be, basically attack, 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 attack. Like recently, there was even a Republican memo that talked about don't defend,
Don't defend
Trump, attack China. There you go. Like, yeah. So it's like and the Republicans seem to be incredibly good with that strategy. Something that the Democrats just I don't even really think the Democrats have a strategy at this point. So
I mean, all
Yeah.
throughout, they're essentially not doing too much. Like most people that I've heard from, they're not really happy, especially since with the new stimulus or lack thereof in the latest bill that was released, I think maybe a couple of days ago, where they released a bunch of money and gave it all to, several $1 trillion to a bunch of humongous, ginormous companies that are deeply invested in globalist ties, blah blah blah. So the money is not really going to easily go back to the people, like in any shape or form, unless it goes to small businesses,
yeah,
right? In order to revive
Overhead.
like 50% of like niche small businesses, like the local mom and shop, pop shop who's open from like, I don't know, 9 to 4 p.m., just selling $1 coffees and pastries. Like 50% of those are totally closed down, not going to reopen, largely due to the government's lack of stimulus that we've seen a bunch of other countries, invest heavily into their public sector, because it makes sense. But
well, don't forget they're not doing a lack of stimulus. They're doing a lack of stimulus in the right place, or maybe the place that they want it to go to. We've
Right.
done 5 coronavirus stimulus bills, and most of them, I think, when everyone got that $1,200 check in the bank, or some people did. I've heard there were some reasons that you didn't get the check if you were married to an immigrant, or if you were a dependent. But 83% of that bill, where everyone got $1,200, the 83% of that funding actually went to the bailouts for large companies. Some of them even named within like Trump's sphere of influence and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
But okay, so I think it's time to go on to the next topic. Before we do, Christian, I've heard that you've been kind of quiet. So do you have anything else that you want to say on this before we move on?
Oh no. I mean, my whole stance on the thing is that I feel like this is ultimately minor, and the whole time I've been kind of thinking about the rather, like, God, what was that one guy who like said, no, if my wife got raped and killed, I wouldn't execute the man who did it. And I keep on thinking about how that guy like lost his presidency for saying that.
Yeah, Dukakis, I think was his name, in '88. He was against Bush, and the guy came out and was like, "If Kitty Dukakis was raped and murdered, would you support the death penalty?" And he was like, to be honest, he didn't really screw up his remarks that much, but
No,
he went very well. But apparently that cost him the entire presidency, because the media went after him for being like, "What a hypocrite! He would have his wife be raped and murdered, and he wouldn't want to kill the guy who did it, and he kept true to his values and all that sort of stuff."
Yeah,
but it's I know this isn't the next topic we're gonna bring up, but like the Biden situation. I mean, it's just that with Biden, there were so many things he did during the primary that I'm surprised that wasn't well, I mean, I'm not surprised, because he was the media's pick and the party's pick, and Dukakis, I guess, kind of wasn't in terms of the media. Maybe Bush was very popular back then, I don't know. But like with the whole, like, I want to start, there was so many gaffes. You had him, when Sanders was up and winning, he was like, "Are you worried about Sanders?" Or that one guy, he comes around and goes, why you're getting nervous, man, you're getting nervous. Just like there's so many.
My favorite is when he visits like workers and whatnot, like people, or like essential workers and stuff, and then he's like, listen, Jack, I'm gonna do everything I can in my power to make sure you guys are happy and healthy. And then he's like, well, what do you haven't announced your policy for this? And then he's like, listen, I'm not gonna say it here, but like, listen, you mf'er, you know, I'm gonna kill your family, and he just starts going ham on this poor man.
It was what's it called? Everyone on, I do remember this because I was like, oh my god, how, like, because people were like, yeah, he's lost Michigan. He lost Michigan because he just yelled at a construction worker or a factory worker about how he should go vote for the other guy if he doesn't believe in his gun right bills or his gun control bills. And people on Twitter was like, that construction worker or factory worker is a Trump supporter. I don't believe what he says anyway. So it's kind of like, it's just very, it's I mean, I guess he did have, I don't know, conservative views, but I mean, I don't know. It's just,
Yeah, that's not how.
But yeah, it's
all
but
about
yeah,
reaching across the aisle.
yeah.
He's terrible at it.
Like I remember in Iowa, there was one person that was like asking him about stuff, and he was like, "Well, if you don't agree with what I say, you should vote for somebody else." And it's just like, I don't think that's how you campaign yourself when you go tell people, if you don't believe in what I say, go vote for someone else. It's like,
He
Campaigning on
flounders.
behalf of everyone else.
yeah.
He flounders so hard on stage. Like I feel like from the first debate that he had, when like that scenario with Kamala Harris came up about busing Sierra, I was like, oh my god, he's
Oh.
just dead from that. I was like, how is he gonna pull back from this? And he kept messing up on so many scenarios where people just kept digging into him, and then suddenly everyone was like, wait a minute, Biden's associated with Obama, and then it's just like, oh wait, I remember that. Now let's all vote for Biden. It's just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, it was the whole point is that the DNC, the party, were like, all right, come on, moderates, you got to come together. We're gonna lose to Sanders if you don't bring it together now. And so basically, even Harris, like, it just, all of them have no backbone. They have no values to stand up because they'll all throw it away. What is it? Biden didn't support gay marriage until 2008.
Oh,
Buttigieg throws his support behind him, and he's like, well, he's reformed now, he's different. Kamala Harris, I was one of those girls on the bus. I was one of those girls. I support Biden. Klobuchar and Warren both were like, Biden, your mental decline is kind of a bit weird. I don't think you're ready to be president. And and Warren is like, Sanders said a woman couldn't be president. And then she's like, well, I mean, Biden has 8 sexual allegations, but I'll go ahead and throw my support behind him and not behind another progressive like myself, which I am not anymore. She can call herself one, but she probably really isn't.
That's though. Like Biden has on recording been known to speak for like segregation and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, because
He
Storm
called black people
Thurmond.
Negroes in the past.
That was
I'm not joking.
that was just their generational thing back then.
Hey,
You can't
hey,
change
listen.
you can't
Jack,
change the
if you
generation.
don't like it, if you don't like it, go vote for the other Biden. I
Go
mean
vote
the
for
other guy.
The other
Yeah,
Biden.
I think he called Sanders Putin and also president. I think he called 2 people
He called
president.
him president several times.
Yeah.
Listen, Mr. President.
I think he also said, "I'm Senator Joe Biden. I'm Vice President Joe Biden. I'm running for the Senate." And he was actually, no, you're running for president there, buddy. I think you forgot about that. I don't know. He's probably gonna get replaced by Kumo in August. So it's like we're just beating a dead horse at this point.
With who?
Andrew Kumo. It's this that New York governor. Basically, if you've noticed it, yeah, because that's the
Yeah.
thing. Well, because it's like. I don't think anybody knew who Kumo was before this last year, unless you live in New York, right? But now it's like, it's
Evidence by me going who?
yeah, because it's just the media is like, Kumo, he's the governor of New York, and he's like, I will do this about the coronavirus, and then everyone's like, oh my god, the leadership compared to
Exactly.
Trump. Yeah, it's like he's brothers with that one guy that I think Jake, not Jake.
Andrew Cuomo.
Well,
Yeah.
well, that's the governor, but I'm talking about his brother in is a CNN host. I can't remember.
Yeah,
It's another
that's right.
Kumo. They were shown to be lovable brothers because they were like going back and forth at one another on live television, and people were like, oh, "That's so cute." Imagine if we had that
Chris
guy in the
Cuomo.
office. Chris Cuomo. There you go. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's very. Anyway, we're talking about news from this week. We're going to news from last year. So I guess we'll go ahead and go to the next one. And I don't know how. I think we might not skip this one, but we might not talk about it as long as we did the last one. So I guess we'll go ahead and combine, because there's another article down here that talks about it, but we'll go just combine everything together. So Denmark and Poland, and I believe it's France as well, are refusing to bail out companies registered in offshore tax havens, like coronavirus bailouts. So because, as we know with the offshore tax havens, because when they register their headquarters there, or their company there, they don't have to pay taxes to not only the country that they're mostly operating in, and they also don't have to like pay any taxes at all because their headquarters is in a tax haven. It's kind of like with the Carnival cruises, they don't have to pay taxes at the ports they go to because they wear the flags of Bermuda and Jamaica, those places that don't really charge them that much, that many taxes and all this sort of stuff. So, what I mean, I believe everyone here probably doesn't have the biggest sort of pro big big company view.
Hard to say.
But yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like you reap what you sow. You make more money because you don't get, you're an offshore tax haven. You don't pay that much in taxes. So, oh no, the country. It's like it's kind of funny, right? Because it's like, you may have your headquarters in like the Bahamas, right? But all of your businesses are in France. So it's like, oh shoot, the coronavirus is screwing me up. We only operate in France. We need the bailout. We need the coronavirus bailout. France, please give it to us. And then France is like, well, why don't you ask, the Bahamas to bail you out because that's where your headquarters is. And so it's just kind of funny. And there's a certain breed of people that will come out and be like, well, that'll be devastating to the economy, to the economy in that area. People will lose jobs, they'll lose money, they'll lose their lives, and they might even go homeless. And it's like, well, I think France has better, welfare programs than we do in the States. I think if people lose their jobs from some company in an offshore tax haven, going bankrupt, they'll probably be okay.
I'll take the bite to slightly devil's advocate. I'll probably say I would say things for like cruises and things like that. They're really economically or environmentally unfriendly. It's obviously like a tourist thing. It's not too much of an interest to me. But things for like airline industries, from what I've heard, their ratio gain, even though it's in the billions, it's like barely any net profit. It's like they spend like 4 billion and they make
Yes.
7 billion, so like they don't make that large of a profit, and obviously it's so important to have to exist in the world. So bailouts for that I feel like makes sense, but things for entertainment industry and especially like as for like you're saying cruise lines, I don't really see too much of a need for that. As long as infrastructure is okay, I think that's what we should be focusing on. We don't need to be bailing out in like entertainment industry, but like if we can spare help here and there, obviously we should focus primarily on what's needed, and then people who need help later on. And obviously I would say focus on citizens more than those industries because they shouldn't be focusing on a yearly paycheck to paycheck position, and not be really greedy with pushing on CEO and not like having like a safety net.
Yeah, what's nice about those situations is that the governments are pretty keen over there. Could you repeat which countries were involved with that? Was it France,
It's
Netherlands?
currently France, Denmark, Poland, and I don't know if I think those are the only ones. Denmark, Poland, and France. And I know that France and Denmark are very, very big in welfare. I don't know about Poland, but I do know that Poland has like a author, not a dictator, but they're very right wing in terms of that. So it's kind of interesting because usually you see like more like sometimes you'll see it the other way, but with what I see sometimes is that a lot of right wing people really like business. So it's kind of interesting to see that they're not like bending the knee. They're strong manning I guess what most people would consider them to be for and not against.
I'm pretty keen to note that those countries so far listed are all in the EU. And the EU tends to have a pretty central way of dishing out lots and lots of money. Most of the large airlines like Air France got like I think 10 billion as the coronavirus hit travel, right? That was a New York Times article that came out a little while ago. A big thing to note about that and the individual areas in the EU is that an individual country cannot print money, right? Like
Yeah, because they use the euro, right, and that would screw up all
Right.
the other economies of people in the
in
EU.
terms of in terms of the economy, we see it's a similar problem here with the states in the U.S. It's that the countries in the EU pretty much act like really heavy centralized economy or economic states, right? They don't act as true money lending sources of government like the federal bank does in the U.S., where we can spend trillions and it doesn't really matter, and we can bail out this and bail out that, and it's like pocket change, right? Effectively, because you just add a bunch of zeros, right? France can't do that. Norway can't do that independently. So it
So-
makes sense that
okay.
they'd want to.
So I see.
tenuous.
It's kind of like how even they're kind of like it's like the they're trying to get the goodwills of people. They're like, oh wow, they're sticking up against the tax havens, but possibly because they actually can't give financial aid to those tax havens.
Right, and even if they could, it already. As far as I know about France, the people there are pretty restless when it comes to the EU. Like there was an entire movement a while ago. I think in like the most recent presidency where there's a reason why the neo-nationalist party came in second, right? It was the
Mhm.
Democrats versus the neo-nationalists. And there's a reason behind that, and it's because there's a civil unrest in France. People do not like the EU because of these, boisterous bailouts given to companies that don't really impact their country and their jobs and their anything, right? And so I think it would really be salt on the wound if they not only bailed out, the big businesses,
But also the tax havens.
yeah, but
Yeah.
also the businesses that were using those tax havens to gain that much more money or save
Okay.
that much more money.
Okay. So before we go to break, Cam, Christian, do you have anything that you want to say?
No, this one was over my head.
That's
I'm
fine.
glad-
That's fine.
I'd like to say I'm very glad that we have Stefan here because he's a noted professional economist.
Yeah, he actually works right now at the Economist, and he's their economic advisor. He
Yeah,
gives
he's-
them he's a
Yep.
3-star Michelin writer. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, he's posted such scathing articles as
3-star?
con.tech.
Okay. We're gonna go to an ad read for now. We're gonna take a quick break. This episode of The Trash Can is brought to you by Spotify. Whether you're up in the clouds or going way underground, it's easy to take your music with you wherever you go. With Spotify Premium, you can save your favorite songs to your phone and listen offline. That means you can play anywhere, anytime, without using any data. And right now, you can try Spotify Premium for free for 30 days. You ready to make the move? Tap the banner to learn more. All right, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that ad read. We're moving on to the next topic here about coronavirus protests and 5G cell towers. Do they cause the coronavirus? Are people reacting and freaking out more than they should? Who knows, but we're going to talk about it right now. So, just to give a little bit of context and background, currently right now within the past week, we've had some interesting incidences basically revolving around 5G cell towers, and we also have those protests going about we see in Michigan, and we even saw the president talk about liberate Michigan, liberate Ohio, liberate all this other sort of stuff. I thought at first he may have been giving attack plans. Like, finally now the Civil War comes and everyone rises out of their homes, with their guns and takes over the country, liberates all the states. But no, it's just work more, please. That's what liberation means. It means to go out and get back to work. But anyhow, should we read one of the articles here, or should we just get right into it?
I think we should just get into it since
Okay.
we're all kind of just looking at it.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I made sure now over the break that everyone read these two articles that we pulled up, because it might have been a little bit easier than just having to read out the articles and then having to splice that up. And there might have been some stuff that I didn't say that people wanted to talk about. But anyhow, so yeah, these protests, I think everyone can kind of say that they're idiotic, and they're definitely not within the norm as much as some people might suggest they are. One interesting correlation, I'm going to go into my family life here. My mother, she doesn't love Trump, but she just doesn't know why everyone hates him. He's trying to do his job, right? And so she says things that are just completely out of the blue and completely odd. And she'll be like, if all these people back then, if they were talking this way about, if Trump was a king and they were talking about this sort of stuff, they would be hanged. You'd kill them. And I was like, oh, geez. And then I asked her about these protests, because most of them are Trump supporters, and she goes, they should be shot. I go, whoa, they're Trump supporters.
Whoa!
She goes, yeah, I don't care. They should be shot. They're perpetuating and increasing the virus, and so yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. And I figured out using both of those little aspects of knowledge that she's just very gung ho in her terms of
I like
dealing
dead
with
people.
situations.
She sounds like she really likes dead people.
Something like that, I think. But yeah. So it's kind of funny. We've seen a lot of videos, counter protesters. I mean, I feel like maybe they're. I don't agree with the counter protesters if they're talking about like get back inside because they're kind of doing the same thing. But I mean, if they're counter protesting the fact that like no, we shouldn't be going back to work, then that's fine with me because it's like the whole idea is that I think most of the world is in lockdown technically. Some people are doing it more harsher than others. I've seen in India they beat you with sticks if you're caught without a mask, or even out and about.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Just means an extended vacation, you know.
Well, I mean, there's
I think the
people,
harshest
yeah.
in more compact city areas is just like a good $100 or so fine.
Oh, really? Where you live?
No, not where I live. I'm not in lockdown.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My
I'm in
friend,
Cincinnati. We're not a big state.
my
We're
friend
not
in
a big
Texas did actually get escorted back home. A police officer pulled her over, and they asked, "Where are you going?" And then she got escorted all the way back home to make
Wow.
sure that she was actually going home.
That is, oh, they, okay, so she was going home to begin with. But
Yeah.
that's interesting because because I still have to do some driving here and there to go get groceries. So maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite. And that's one thing that I've seen with this outbreak is that people can be hypocrites and it could be as easily as one of us. But, I make sure to stay 6 feet away from people. I'm very like
Yeah.
it's like now my antisocialness is rewarded instead of
yeah. A lot of oh man, what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of antisocial.
Everyone's sitting inside
introverted.
dying, like,
Yeah,
you're-
yeah.
Yeah,
It's like,
introverts.
oh.
Like, you gotta stay away from everyone. Introverts. Well,
Oh my God. You've been inside this whole time. You must be a hero. There's a pandemic going on. What's
Yeah,
happening?
it's kind of funny because it's like there are some people that are like straight up breaking down because they can't go outside, and it's like maybe that's like introverts do have that kind of I guess advantage, but like I'm surprised that some people are like I can't go to the bars, I can't go to the dance club, I can't go out and talk physically to my friends. And then they like start having a mental breakdown and anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and it's just like all you have to do is stay inside. You can Zoom your friends, you can call your friends, you can text your friends, you can do a lot of things with your friends. You just just don't have a large public gatherings.
it's almost how we are or how most of the experts just say. But like as a species, we're a group mentality.
Mm-hmm.
We're packs. So being around one another is how we are supposed to be. And since this virus has essentially stripped that away, it's just a weird and harsh change for the ones that have been around other people for so long.
Yeah, and it is necessary to remember that a lot of people, if your big hobby is playing games, a lot of other people, their big hobby is,
Going
Yes, going to
out
the bar.
swimming, or
Yeah.
athletic stuff, or like
Yeah,
or like maybe a chess meeting. I understand.
Chess
Go to
No,
I can't go
I can't go to
to
chess.
chess club. But
I'm just gonna move my rook to e4 now.
Damn you,
Oh.
Deep Blue!
Oh, it's just I guess it's just kind of interesting to see, and it's also interesting to see that this is not just a U.S. thing because I could have sworn it was just a U.S. thing, but no, there are people around the world that are wanting to, but I really don't like because I understand that some of the protesters like they aren't getting the relief they need, right? Like I would sympathize more with a U.S. protester than protesters from France, because France, they're giving their people a lot of benefits. Maybe not as much as I'm thinking, but definitely they're not going to let them go homeless like some in the U.S. would. Like there might be someone that they didn't qualify for that relief bill, and they still can't go to work because maybe they aren't essential in a way. Maybe they're like a factory worker, but they're not an essential factory worker, and they're like, I actually do really need to get back to work because I'm not making any money and I'm going to go homeless because we haven't enacted any laws. I mean, if they're living in if they're renting an apartment and their landlord still is demanding payment, then it's kind of like you can't really do anything. I guess you can squat there, and because none of the judges enacting eviction orders are running right now, so I guess If you wanted to live there for free for a little bit, you could do that. But I mean, I don't sympathize with the workers or with the ones that are like, I need a haircut. Can you open back up the salon? We get, please? McDonald's closes at 7. I want it open in 24 hours. I need food. I need my Big Mac at 3 a.m. in the morning. Right? So, yeah. Let's yeah. Does anyone else want to say something? Because I realize I've been talking for quite a bit.
Um, I guess we haven't really pushed any sort of mortgage pushbacks, right? We haven't done anything with that law-wise. Anything with mortgages or rent.
I think I've
uh,
seen like Ilhan Omar talk about kind of doing that, but I don't know if she has any
It's just
sort
one
of.
person,
Well,
basically.
I mean, I don't know, probably the squad, Rashida, AOC doing something like that.
I know that it's kind of interesting to see the mentality of people really not caring. There have been towns that are kind of like beach resort areas, and from what they said, there was one town where more than half the population was on the beaches at the time, so the town just simply canceled like closing the beaches because it was, obviously more than half the population didn't agree with that concept,
Oh
so
yeah.
they just stopped it. And they opened it back up.
I think I read something about that, something about Mediterranean beaches on the coast.
I think that was the U.S. one actually.
Oh, because Myrtle
Florida,
Beach or something
just-
like that.
Yeah, Florida got sworn, and California, I believe, too.
I'm still doing beach stuff.
People doing beach stuff because it's spring, it's summer, it's getting warmer.
Yeah.
This is the time where we're supposed to be outside, and we're not allowed.
Oh yeah, like I passed by the park recently and I noticed that people were having their summer grill, like sessions, their get-togethers and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe some people. I mean, it's growing every day. It feels like it's kind of. I don't know. It feels like we're not. I don't know if I want to say we're past the worst part because this is kind of what happened. If we look back at the Spanish influenza, we saw that people did enact things, and then they waited. They didn't wait too long. They waited a little bit, and then they're like, "Oh, the curve is down. We'll open up back up society." And then the big second wave happened. A lot more people died. It was a lot worse, right?
Yeah,
So
well, I mean,
And not to mention all these 5G cell phone towers are just gonna
Oh yeah.
corona back to you, which is stop forgetting.
Replace the fluids in them with some bleach, and it'll clean them out real good.
Hasn't that always been like a thing though? It's like cell phone towers.
Yeah, I've
Cell
seen
phone towers.
like it's like a Ben Garrison type sort of conspiracy theory. It's like the Wi-Fi is melting your children's brains or something like that.
Yeah, I did research on this slightly because I did stuff for at least for nuclear power plants, and if you're to live within like the average radius of a nuclear power plant, you get about as much radiation from eating one banana per year.
Really?
So it's not that big of a change.
Well, see, I'm not like I'm gonna go ahead and go against the grain here and say I'm anti-nuclear power, but only because I've seen, we've seen Chernobyl, and we've seen Fukushima, and we've seen 3 Mile Island, the Boab Hole in India. It's like, yeah, I bet it's a lot more efficient than a bunch of windmills and solar panels. But if one mistake happens, if one person just doesn't have that, in the right, like a whole section of Earth is completely unlivable for all of our lifetimes.
Yeah, I mean the area of the width of radioactivity, very very close to the area is slightly concerning, just because houses in my area are required, since we have like a couple of miles away a power plant. There's that's a yearly radiation check, right? To say, oh, this is how much radiation you're actually going to be exposed to, and it's entirely negligible when it comes to health. But
it's kind of scary
because it can never get better, right?
Yeah.
As they have to dump more and more waste, just hold them in those barrels and those humongous pools, because there's, you can't launch them into space, because what if it goes wrong in
Rains right
space?
back down.
Yeah.
It's just essentially a nuclear bomb.
Well, maybe
Right.
we can shoot it at the moon, and then we'll just leave it
Again,
there.
that's a rocket. You have to get to the moon.
Right, it's like you don't want that going wrong, otherwise all that's in the atmosphere. Years worth of waste.
Well, I mean, another thing is I read up about Chernobyl having forest fires, and that was actually causing radiation to go back up into the sky, right?
I see.
And so
Yeah.
and even though that happened so long ago, it's still like crazy what it can still do, right? And so it's like, I mean, and then yeah, I'm glad you reminded that those nuclear power plants actually do have waste you need to dispose of. So it's like, I mean, I don't know. I think somebody said something about wind power. There actually was like a negative to wind power. I can't remember what it was that but they did say,
Yeah.
but they did
No,
say
I
it
think
was.
that was Trump.
Well, no, yeah. But I mean, like an actual, like environmentally debilitating
Everything has a
negative.
form of pollution.
Yeah, a lot of wind towers have been disruptive to a lot of migration paths for a lot of birds.
Hmm.
They're getting caught in them, and it's a bit weird, but
And I think if like it's a couple that has to like
How
what?
does that even work?
I
A
mean,
bird just
don't
like
know.
say, "All right, we got these swirling fans coming in our way."
go right in them.
Yeah, they don't
go
I
right.
mean,
they don't know how they work. They just see like a thing that pops up every now and they're like, okay, well now there's nothing there, and it's not normal
Yeah.
to have a big spinny thing blocking your flying path.
I mean, more than that, it reduces the wind power that the winds actually have, and that also causes some troubles with the wind currents. I've been told.
I mean, there's not really any negatives to solar power unless you want to consider that the sun goes out for good, and I think then we have bigger problems than that.
It covers my
Yeah,
lawn.
We're gonna have a real solar problem when the sun explodes in 20 billion years from now.
Renewable
Yeah.
energy. Read up on the first law of thermodynamics, dumbass.
My lawn's gonna run out of grass if I have all these solar power
There
panels.
is one issue with solar panels, and that's if you implement it irresponsibly, which China is very good at doing.
Mhm.
They messed up their fisheries actually because they put a whole swath. Remember that a little while ago there was this news thing that, oh, China's so great, they made this floating island and it like just was made out of metal and it's all solar panels. Whoa.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. The only problem is that the sun's not getting down to the ecosystem in the ocean, and it's causing a huge issue. It's very similar to the U.S. had a breakout of a something called folia, and it's essentially like marine kelp, but it grew like right, and it just blacked out entire swaths of area, and they had to, I think in California they had to chlorinate like these humongous areas of water and just to try to get rid of it. So it's it, so long as you do it correctly and you do it mindfully, most of the time, any environmentally friendly alternative sources, renewable sources of energy, turns out it's pretty good.
At the very worst, it gives us like an extra fucking 100 years to fix the problems that we have currently going on with fossil fuels.
Right.
Like, most of the stuff that you see that's negative is, I mean, being honest, it's by either conspiracy nuts or people who have a very big vested interest in the oil industry.
Right.
Right.
I did read up on a post recently about there's a town, I think about 4,000 people on a coastline, and the average cost to keep that town alive would be like 2.1 billion a year, which would be one, obviously less if we were to fix the problem itself. But another thing is just you could actually just buy them all new houses and relocate them, and it would still be cheaper than that as well. So
Right.
that's just kind of an interesting view on that. But obviously, you don't want to sacrifice all the infrastructure that was grown there. As what is it? Ben Shapiro said, "We'll just sell the houses," And
Oh, you can't sell the houses if they're under the ocean. And yeah.
Who? Aquaman. Who's gonna buy 'em?
Okay, I'm gonna be the uninformed citizen, and I'm going to say something that's probably
That's
very
my job.
Trump-like.
Yeah.
Why don't we create huge crevices in the ground, dig up ravines, put water there, build hydroelectric dams, and there you go.
Why don't we just get rid of all the water in the Mediterranean?
That was the thing in Man in the High Castle. Apparently, that was a really good economic plan because they turned it all into farmland.
No,
Yeah.
but in reality, it's all going to turn to more an extension
Yeah.
of the Sahara.
Yeah, it would. It's pretty good.
What?
Yeah, because it's mostly desert. The sea
that
desert.
sounds like a Futurama answer. It's like, why don't we just make stilts, put a plate on top of every other major city, build on top of that, and then when the water comes, it just comes right under the sea.
Well,
That
give it enough time, and you're gonna unironically have people who are like, because of the fact that our planet is just unable to handle humanity, we just have to destroy all of the oceans, and it's just the only way we can survive. Because eventually we're gonna get woke enough that we realize the only way to solve any problem is just destroying absolutely everything and
Yeah,
making lives worse.
I think I saw an article which was like, how we're going to solve global warming? That's right. We're going to have boats manned by AI constantly dumping ice into the Arctic Ocean.
I know, it's so
Oh,
good.
man.
It's like an act that is literally from Futurama. That is literally from Futurama.
Do you know how you make things cooler? By making another spot warmer, by pushing all that cool out. So it's perpetual heat to cold. And stuff.
It's like not buying an AC and instead just leaving your fridge open, right?
Well, one thing that I don't know if I want to say fell for or just was uninformed about was desalination, which is the process of removing salt from salt water so you get fresh water. I was like, well, listen, if the big corporations are going to constantly pollute everything and going to make our lives a lot worse and water is going to rise, why don't we, and when we're going to run out of water, why don't we take the water from the ocean, desalinate it, and then
Super expensive.
and not only that, but I learned that, of course, I mean, I don't know why, but for the longest time I thought how they got the water was probably just they scoop it up with a bag. But no, they they suck it up directly from the ocean, right? And so not only do they suck it up directly from the ocean, but the chemicals in the desalination process, they just dump that right back out into the ocean, and there's not a net with the suckers, right? There's not a net with there, so they'll suck in fish and flora and all sorts of life in the ocean up in there and just kill it. So yeah, anything near those desalination plants are just completely like there's no fish living there because they just get sucked in. Right.
Yeah. Whenever someone comes up to you and says the answer to your problem is just seek new avenues of energy or of this or of that or any kind of resource, it's wrong. It's incorrect. It's almost always something we already have or something that we need to stop doing. That's almost always the answer. We need to stop doing something or we need to do something that we already have. And the only reason why we don't have it en masse is because of oil companies, like 99% of the time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
A big thing from what I've heard though is that we don't have the efficiency output and the infrastructure to do it right now though, so we can't just suddenly like snap our fingers and transfer. It's going to take a very long time to get to that position to have the efficiency as to what oil has right now. But I mean, oil is negative $48 right now, so
Yeah.
maybe that'll change.
Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. That was another topic I wanted to say. I love the fact that a metal barrel will cost like $30, but as soon as you put oil into it, that barrel is worthless.
Do you want to know? I read a comment that explained it really well. Do you know why it's kind of done like this?
Well, because they don't have anywhere to put it, so they are literally paying people to take the oil.
Yeah, but also it was so I think how it was phrased is like some evil man stole papers to look at what's projected and what's going to be in the future, but the paper was wrong. So what they did is they said, I'm going to buy the oil for this price right now, at the same price, but in like a couple years. So everyone's like, oh, these guys are mass doing that. They know what they're doing. So then everyone started doing that, but then everyone realized that they made a big uh-oh. So now they're like, wait a minute, I'm going to lose a whole bunch of money now. So I'm going to sell off the fact that I'm buying this for like $50 and someone's going to give me $38 for it.
Yeah.
Right. All supply, no demand.
Yep.
I'm genuinely surprised they haven't just burnt the oil because they've done that in the past. They have literally just gotten rid of oil if they can't do anything with it.
Well, we'll put it back into the ground because then you can re-drill it.
Yeah. No, but they have actually, back more in the 50s and stuff like that when we thought
just
that
dig
Texas...
a ditch and put the barrels inside of them.
Yeah, no, they actually do that though. That is a thing they do.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think I remember seeing in my history book about how they grew so much corn and wheat in the 50s that they just dumped it out into the street because they had no where to put it, and you just see huge piles of grain in the street, right?
Yeah, and this is another thing, right? Whenever someone tells you, "Oh, we don't have enough of X resource," we do. Like oil is a rare exception there, and the problem is that we have people wasting it like flagellantly, all for the purpose of making money. Because the hunger, for example, right? Like we make such a ridiculous amount. Yeah, we make a ridiculous amount of food, and we could easily solve world hunger, but it's just not profitable to do so. And the same thing is going on with oil. Back when back when people were like, America is never going to run out of oil. It's oil forever. We'll never have to invade any other countries. And then they did. And before that happened, people would actually straight up burn oil. They actually got rid of it by just dumping it in a ditch and setting it on fire. And that was the profitable thing to do. And of course, now those idiots are regretting it, right? But it's ridiculous. It's absolutely just asinine that thing even happens in the first place.
Well, what I want to see is, can you turn petroleum into a cooking oil?
If you're finance,
If you have something else to do with the byproduct, maybe.
Honey, what's for dinner? Charred chicken.
yeah,
It's just
That is
actual
just
tar.
delicious.
it's so gooey.
Hey, it's everything can be a tartar now. Look, we're rich.
Tartar.
Another thing of waste I've heard about actually is that in like places like Wisconsin, Iowa, they have nobody to sell their milk and like eggs and grain to, so they literally are just like dumping it because they can't store it anywhere.
Yep.
So it's just complete
Yep.
waste. And it's like we have people, we have it's like 1 in 8 children go hungry every night. They don't have food. Donate 25 cents so they can get food. And it's
just
like
give 'em some milk.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
not even the worst problem because the milk, especially, is just. I almost want to say it's almost as bad as the oil industry, the milk industry, and the meat industry,
Right.
because it's just there's so much weight. Like, okay, if we're taking all like every single animal related industry, including like breeding and stuff like that, right? Like every little bit of things, I would say that yeah, honestly, they're probably worse than the oil industry as a whole, because the amount of waste and the amount of just this administrative nightmare that's pumped
Right.
into the animal or like the meat industry alone, right, is just absolutely insane. And the lack of foresight and the lack of just any kind of just brains going into the operations, and the fact that they're practically employing workers who are working for minimum wage and then not receiving any like health benefits that are actually going to help them get rid of like the terrible memories of them like murdering dozens of things a day, and it's just all this terrible stuff. It's ridiculous how terrible how much it costs to produce milk, to produce meat, and all this stuff, and how much we just throw it out, right? Like it's like estimated half of the meat that goes into grocery stores will get thrown out either by the people who buy it or by the grocery stores themselves. And I have very much seen that, like especially during the virus, apparently
yeah.
nobody's buying meat, and it's just terrible,
well, I mean that's not
So-
true. I know that wasn't there a bunch of meat shortages like a couple weeks ago or something like that.
Of
Maybe.
specific types,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, in my little municipality, the nearby Provigo has it ran out of meat in the first week, and then nobody started buying it, and of course the grocery store was like, oh, we better buy more meat. People sure are liking them, and so they just like tossed out like fucking.
Oh my!
see, yeah.
I still can't.
Overstocking.
I'm surprised that people are still like stocking up on stuff, like because it's like you would have thought, because people were like, "Oh, I gotta throw out all my bread and milk that I bought because who knows, I wasn't gonna drink all that milk and eat all that bread in a couple weeks. Now it's all rotten." I still saw when I went to the grocery store yesterday. I still saw there was a guy. He had his entire cart full of gallons of milk. It's
Nice.
like. Okay,
He was
but
waiting
here's
to
the
pull
thing.
out anyone that looked at him, right?
No. He was sick, right? He had the turban on and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and hope that milk he's like buying it for like a community sake, right?
Maybe.
Because it's like those guys really enjoy giving back to the community. Their whole religion is based on positivity and all that. I just if it was some
Yeah.
but like
Yeah. I was just really surprised to go into the grocery store during like the first week of everybody freaking out, and then I check and I'm like, all right, I need to get yogurt, and I go over to the yogurt aisle, all the yogurt's gone. I go to the egg aisle, all the like anything that was perishable was just done with. Like I don't know why people chose to take out meat and and yogurt and eggs and milk. I just don't understand. Like, and people, I've talked to people and they said, okay, well, eggs, people are able to boil them and jar them and stuff like that, and that'll make them last longer. And yeah, that's true. And they are cheap, but it's just ridiculous that yogurt is one of the first things to go. And I don't know what people are doing with that stuff.
Well, some
Yeah,
some of
put
the
it in your mouth.
reasons, some of the reasons I do say that, like, I feel like we're in the lull, or we're past like the first stage of hardships, is because I do remember when I went to the grocery store the first couple days of the lockdown or the stay-at-home orders, and it was empty. The stores were empty. But now when I went to the store recently, there wasn't that many empty things at all. I was able to get what I was able to need, and it was like things are kind of stocked. And I don't know if that means that more people are working as essential workers, and they'll only call them heroes and essential, so they have to avoid giving them actual benefits. But it's
Oh, all right, I have
yeah.
a work story
Nice.
about that.
Nice, go for it.
All right, so I have a guy. I won't use names, but he is a very strong conspiracy theorist and Trump supporter.
Nice.
I don't actually know if those two things need to be combined, but it really seems like Trump supporters are strong conspiracy theorists. Anyway, he was complaining about, people being called heroes. Am I going to be called a hero? Am I going to get a cake for my efforts because I had to come to work? And like someone just said, well, why don't you just put on a cape? And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna put on a cape, put on my tuxedo, be like Dracula.
Well, you did hear about the Las Vegas Strip. They got the Air Force, the Blue Jays, I think.
Oh
right?
yeah, I know what you mean. They're flying over with the Air Force
yeah,
to
yeah,
show our
yeah,
appreciation to the healthcare workers.
But not over
Yeah.
Devil something, Blue Devils, I think.
No, Blue Angels.
Blue Angels. There you go. I had my there you go, heaven and hell mixed up. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, with all these, issues of not getting properly compensated, it's a good thing we have all these celebrities doing that compilation of what was it? What was that song they all sung?
Oh my god! Like,
Yeah, John Lennon, Imagine, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
imagine a world with no hardships. That's the thing, is that you have all these celebrities being like, we're with you. We're here. We're struggling as well. And it's not like they have
Their
personal
tequilas.
chefs, mimosas in the daytime. Oh, man, I really wish I could go out to the strip. And I'm just so bored right now in my big 10,000-acre mansion.
yeah, no.
I can see it because a lot of celebrities are extroverts. They go on stage, they get a lot of
Of
crowds,
course, yeah.
and now they can't do that.
No, and it's oh my god, it's amazing. Like, God, who was that guy that was like that was recorded crying?
They
Alan
should-
at least
they should-
was.
They should set up a GoFundMe. I'd support them.
We need to get, what's her name, Khloe Kardashian, to be the youngest billionaire in the world. Set up a GoFundMe, give her millions of dollars just so she can be that richest billionaire, youngest in the world, or whatever. Anyway, yeah, that's just so terrible. I really hate all that. And no, I mean, sure, listen, they're rich. They can buy whatever they want. If they really wanted to go, they're probably still going out. Maybe there's some out there that are like,
making deliveries.
well, yeah, and they could be like, hey, oh my god, I really want to talk to my friend Ashton Kutcher. I can call him up. He'll probably come over, or I can go to his house. It's not, nobody's gonna give a crap if I go over there. I'm a celebrity. I can pay them all if I have bail money. It's whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I think we're running close to our time limit, so we'll have to put an end to this for now. Thanks,
Not
everyone.
cover anything that the topic talked about.
Well, hey, it's all about evolving the conversation, which is all about trash and garbage.
Yeah,
and all that sort of stuff. So
Let's quickly resolve the problem. If you're protesting these 5G towers, you are
an idiot.
controversial. Yeah.
There you go.
Sorry.
all right. Anyway, thanks to everyone for listening. This has been the Trash Can, where we make treasure out of average man's garbage. Thank you very much. I'm Darren. This is everyone else if they want to say their goodbyes.
Yeah.
My name's Eric.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you next
all
week.
next week.
All right. Bye-bye.